That one stopped responding a while back. Oh, we live. One, two, testing, 1, 2. I believe we are live. There we go.
Lovely. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our panel on the Zimbabwean podcast landscape, where we have gathered some upstart podcasters to join us today. We've got a few more guests who are lined up, but in all seriousness, we'd like to thank the guys from 6 Foot Weights, Tabo and Senna. They've been doing a lot of amazing things and running a podcast remotely from 2 different continents, even. So I think that'll be something that we'll get into in our discussion. But I know, Dan, you've prepared a long list of very meticulous and thorough talking points. So kick us off, Dan. Where are we going?
Thank you very much, Phil. Greetings to one and all. Welcome to the Zimbabwean panel on the podcasting, and happy World Podcast Day to everyone who's tuned in. So we're going to tell you a little bit about the podcast situation that's happening in Zim. Phil, do you know if we're recording so we can just use this as our episode for this week? Just putting that out there. And we will take this opportunity probably to start off by introductions. So as the host podcast, we will start off. Phil and myself are 2 Broke Twimbos. We're a podcast out of Zimbabwe. We're both based in Zimbabwe, although right now we are traveling, but that's a story for another day. It's a podcast.
How did we schedule this? How did we schedule this?
It's our 11th year with a couple of gaps in between. So I think we are probably the longest running podcast on the panel today. And I might argue one of the longest running in the whole lineup that we had today. But yeah, so that's 2 Broke Twimbos based out of Zimbabwe. We started off with focusing on interviews and focusing on Zimbabwean, and then expanding to African entertainers, celebrities, people who are movers and shakers. And as we were expanding, we realized that a lot of our listeners really enjoyed just our takes and our conversations and our thoughts. So now interviews are only a bonus that comes in every once in a while when we come across people that we really think are cool or that we really want to share with our audience. So that's 2 Broke Twimbos. We release weekly. You can find us on all the different platforms. And of course, as we continue with our discussion today, I have no doubt that we'll be able to give you more details about what the podcast is. Maybe we can ask, I don't know, Phil, unless there's something I left out you want to say about 2 Broke Twimbos before we ask 6 Foot Weights to introduce themselves.
No, I think you covered it pretty well. That's a great rundown. And obviously, I am the smarter and better looking one. But yeah.
The ladies in here can judge for themselves, and the gents. All right, go ahead, 6 Foot Weights.
Yeah, guys, this is us. We are 6 Foot Weights. My name is Tabo, my compatriot there on, I guess, the bottom left of the screen. On my screen is Senna, and we make up the 6 Foot Weights podcast. We've been doing this thing since 2020, since lockdown. I think April, May to be specific of 2020. Where a lot of podcasts started up, and just as many died in the subsequent months. But yeah, it's been a good time with us. I think we're just two best friends who've decided to take our chats that we have on the phone and record them. And it turns out that people are actually interested in what we have to say in different things. And we've been through many a battle with this other podcast here named the 2 Broke Twimbos. So it's been fun sparring with you guys here and there. But yeah, Senna is there. I don't know if Senna's still here. Network problems, South Africa being a third world country and all. But he just disappeared.
You got to carry it.
But yeah, I think that's it. Have I missed anything? Obviously, 6 Foot Weights is everywhere that you listen to podcasts. We are just 2 guys from Bulawayo. We like to do our thing, and I think that's pretty much it. Senna, you're back.
Yeah, sorry, my network kicked me out. Hi everyone. I'm Senna, the other half of 6 Foot Weights. I guess you can say the weights part of the 6 Foot Weights, if that's still applicable. But yeah, just to echo what everything that Tabo said. We started during the pandemic. It was just meant to be, like most things, something new that you take up, and then found that we actually enjoy doing this, and then people enjoy listening to us doing this, and I think that's been the good part. I think that's been what's made it all worthwhile. Just people saying, "Hey, we enjoy this. Can we have more episodes every week?" That's always encouraging. So yeah, man, that's us.
Shout out to Tawe in the chat who says that this doesn't count as an episode. Listen, you're gonna get what you're gonna get. So obviously we have some people here who are probably either Two Broke Twimbos or 6 Foot Weights listeners, and there's probably a lot of people who are unfamiliar with us. So I also thought it would be great for us to talk a little bit, very briefly. This is not going to be like a preaching thing or any kind of long story, but very briefly about our histories, the audiences that we have, and the growth that we've experienced. So obviously this is a huge topic for Two Broke Twimbos because, like I mentioned, we are in our 12th year. We're now in our 12th year. Oh my goodness, Phil, we're in our 12th year. Oh, what? Yeah, we launched in we launched in 2013. We ran for about 2 years, and then we took roughly a year and a half, maybe another 2-year break, and then we relaunched the podcast just in time for the lockdown. So that worked out well for us. And when it started out, honestly, the podcast was just, we did have vague ideas of, we'd love for this to grow and maybe down the line we can figure out how to make this a thing. But at the time, we were just discussing, we were thinking of reaching out to a small group of people that we spoke to on Twitter specifically. Hence the name Twimbos means Zimbabweans on Twitter. It's the original word for Zimbabweans on Twitter. Zimbos on Twitter, Twimbos. Yeah, so we just figured, hey, because I work in radio and Phil was doing the biggest hip hop blog in Africa at the time, we figured, we've got access to some influential people. So why don't we use that to interview some of these people? And that worked great as a growth strategy right in the beginning. We literally interviewed everyone's favorite artists. Every week there was just another huge name. And they were really good interviews that didn't exist in Zim at the time because we sat for 2, sometimes even 3 hours with some of the biggest names in Zimbabwean entertainment and to some extent African entertainment. We had long interviews with Casper Nyovest, aka Manifest from Ghana. And so it was very cool to sort of have this long form content where we literally get deep into the weeds of whatever discussions, and that worked well for us. And over time, obviously, we pivoted. I guess we pretty much interviewed everyone we had access to and figured, what, it seems that a lot of our listeners enjoy when Phil and I just talk about. Actually, what happened was one of our guests canceled on us. So Phil and I were just like, I don't know, what do you think about what happened this week? And it went very well. And that became more and more the type of content that we put out. And right now, that's primarily what the podcast is about. We very much focus on pop culture with a sprinkling of tech and music or entertainment business, because that's where our expertise is. We steer a little bit away from things like politics and the more pressing social issues, because we know there's plenty of places that you can listen to that kind of stuff. And why don't we rather lean into our strengths? And that's worked well for us. I don't know what you think, Phil.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. We do remember how we started the podcast differently, but we're in a public forum. Let's not haggle. But I do think there is a value in telling African stories or giving African perspectives on current events. So I really love the fact that we're part of at least documenting what's happening on the continent, what's happening in Zimbabwe. And we've had a lot of great guests and a lot of great conversations with other African podcasts. And it really helped foster a lot of great conversation around news topics. So yeah, I really enjoy doing the podcast, and it's great that we've got platforms like this that help us further the conversation.
Sorry, Gatoni, do you mind adding King Kandoro to the stage as well? He's one of our panelists as well. He's late as usual. The Drake of podcasts has joined us now.
All right, while he gets set up, I think Thabo and Senna, please give us a little bit of background on your podcast.
Yeah, certainly. So as I mentioned initially, the inception of the podcast was just kind of, hey man, we have some very interesting conversations between the two of us. What if we just recorded this and we put it out there and we see what sticks? And I think our formula just kind of being whatever is interesting to us, surely is going to be interesting to somebody else. And so we talk about anything and everything that kind of pops up. We dabble. We've spoken, obviously what's trending in terms of pop culture, sports, tech, whatever is kind of in the zeitgeist for people in our sort of age bracket is what we talk about and
Words.
try to put a little bit of sense to. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, and I'll just continue with that and say, on the sort of not trying to censor ourselves, I think one of the big things was trying to make sure your personality carries through, and your personality being kind of how we'd always have the conversations. So even if we weren't pressing record, for the most part, it would be a similar kind of chat. The only thing we would have is topics. I guess that's the only difference from the phone calls we would have versus the podcast episodes that we record. That helps us, I guess, to keep it as authentic as possible. And if people like the authenticity, then it makes it easier to do. We just have the guidelines and the topics, and then we just knock it out of the park, so to say.
Thanks, guys. The third podcast that we have in our panel today is Black and Forth, podcast hosted by King Kandoro and Munashe Chirisa. Munashe, unfortunately, is unavailable to join us. But hey, King, what's good? First of all, congratulations on the nomination for NAMA Outstanding Comedian that just came out, in case y'all were wondering. Secondly, please take the opportunity to introduce yourself if you can even hear us, because why are you doing random gestures? Muted. Can't hear nothing. Listen, does the National Arts Council know about this before they put your nomination up? All right. Figure yourself out, my guy. Figure yourself out.
While he does that, Tabo and Senna, I think one of the things that we also had to encounter is we didn't really have a lot of podcasts in the Zimbabwean space or even in the African space when we started out. So before you guys started your podcast, were there any podcasts you're listening to? And what inspired you guys to start the podcast?
I was listening to more sports podcasts, probably stuff related to Man United, the Premier League. So there's always like a lot of conversations around sports. Every now and again, I think Saza in the morning was a thing back then. So I think I'd catch like little topics being discussed on Twitter, and then I'd translate, just go and listen, have a hear what people are saying. I think that was the first Zimbabwean podcast I was listening to at the time, but most of it was sports, American, UK stuff. And then from there, once we started, then you kind of, open up the podcast world and, you start listening to more. Then you meet Two Broke Twimbos, The Feeding Station, all of those. And then, with time, I wouldn't say I was an avid podcast listener myself before we started, but more so after the fact. I mean, before that, it was just limited to sports, politics, whatever was on YouTube. Basically, that the algorithm told me I need to listen to.
We're listening to Mac G. Tell the truth.
Funny enough, I only started. This is actually a true story.
Tell the truth, then.
I'm telling the truth. Don't cancel me.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you for coming. Hola.
That's
Go ahead, sir.
So I actually never listened to podcasts and show until they were being dragged or they were trending for the wrong reasons. I actually didn't even know about Mac G.
Which time? Wait, which time?
That doesn't narrow it down at all.
The one that got them to lose Old Mutual. Let me put it that way. You can take it away yourself.
Anyway, listen. So my assumption, by the way, apart from people who listen to our three podcasts, I assume there's probably a lot of podcasters and people in the podcasting world that are tuned in today. It's, after all, African podcasting. So, I mean, I do think that we can get a bit nerdy. We can talk a little bit about some of the technical aspects. I'm sure it's interesting. But yeah, I just figured to mention that as well. King Kandoro, please introduce your podcast and yourself, and give us 3 reasons why you were late.
I mean, do I really need to introduce myself? But okay, I guess I will. I guess for being polite's sake, I guess I will. Tranquilo Montoya. Beyonce is here. It's okay. How are you guys, my fellow podcasters in the podcasting world? I think I just saw a comment from Kim saying, my 3 favorite podcasts, and that's not what she tells me, So, because three tests, everyone has to fit in, and it's very dope. But hi guys, my name is Kanduro, 1/2 of Black and Forth, also 1/2 of the podcast that introduced Senna to podcasting, Black and Sunday in the morning. So you see, I'm an elder in this community. I'm a pioneer. The David Livingstone is you.
Yeah.
Go
And
on.
just like David Livingston, you discovered something after it already been discovered by other people.
Exactly. Exactly. I literally just gave it a name after it had been established.
So can we quickly say then that I guess you're not a colleague, you're a colonizer.
Exactly.
Tabo is really, Tabo acts like he's not with us, but you are like us, Tabo. You are like us.
But yeah, man. What am I was late because I'm not feeling well. This is
Sorry, my man.
Not feeling well. I think it's the traveling, the transitions in the weather has got me feeling some type of way. But yeah, I'm here. I'm here now.
Dope. Thanks, man. So I guess at this point we've really just done introductions of the podcast.
Okay.
We've just sort of described what our different podcasts are, and
Right.
I guess we can sort of get into the weeds now, because the topic that we had sort of agreed to discuss on this panel was just the general podcasting scene in Zimbabwe, and we figured, we can all just share our different experiences, right? So let me just start off by I'm going to go straight to money. I imagine there's some podcasters who are tuned in right now who are thinking about how do you make money, or have you made money, or damn, you guys have been doing a podcast for almost 12 years. Have you made any money out of it? We can all share sort of our ideas on it. When I quickly drafted up these this little program, I didn't include 6 foot weights in the advertising and revenue section because, y'all do it for the love. But I will say that we are almost doing it for the love. We've had a couple of advertisers. We've run a couple of campaigns, some of which whom we have looked for, and that has been the most difficult. But every now and again, someone has found us and found value in advertising and reaching our audiences. And it's worked out. It's never been a crazy amount of money, but there's been a little bit of revenue that comes in from advertising. Surprisingly enough, I think our most successful or biggest advertising campaign was to a diaspora audience. If you are not from Zimbabwe, you might not be used to that word. It's a very common word in Zimbabwe, where we use it to refer to Zimbabweans who don't live in Zimbabwe. We've had a couple of advertisers. We've also had some of the more mainstream podcast advertisers. For example, Manscaped, which is insane. That's crazy that they reached out to us and did advertising with that. We haven't got that steak gig, Phil. But so
it's coming. It's coming. We groomed so many men. Ladies, you're welcome. I think it's only a matter of time.
Please rephrase.
Crazy.
The point is, we've had over 12 years. Both Phil and I are marketers. We work in advertising. And getting advertising for podcasts in Zim has been insanely difficult. Almost all advertising we've got has been from companies outside of Zimbabwe who are either trying to reach the Zimbabwean audience or who are trying to reach an audience of Zimbabweans who live outside of Zim. And they've worked well from our feedback that we've received. There's been good response from those advertising campaigns, but from in Zim, we haven't really had that much success over a decade in trying to find advertising. We do make a little bit of revenue from our Patreon subscribers. It helps to cover things like the cost of hosting and distributing, and we pay a modest amount to our producer, and that's what the Patreon subscriptions come through and cover. But in general, I mean, we are kind of doing it for the love, you know, so that's our kind of position and situation here. So if you're in another country thinking, damn, we need to make more money advertising, we're thinking the same thing, by the way. Phil, anything to add?
Why are you so negative, Dan? Like, you know, you can also lie. Like, no one's stopping you from lying. You can just lie, and then we could sell like a masterclass program type thing, and then, you know, get our paper up. But no, you want to be honest.
I don't feel like we can sell a masterclass if we're only pulling in 50,000 US a month. It's such a small budget, and it's really,
you know. You know what I mean? The way this crypto market has crashed has really affected our wallets. But anyway, don't start. I think getting into podcasting because you love podcasting is a great thing. It's a great way to collect your thoughts. It's a great way to just think through things. It's like a form of writing almost, because as Dan mentioned, I used to be a writer. I still do write from time to time, but it's a great way for me to like think about things, provide social commentary, and even just work through ideas for clients and stuff like that. So there are benefits to podcasting, and we mainly do it because we love it. We mainly do it because it's a valuable medium of communication to us. But it's certainly not lucrative in Africa. Or let me not speak for the whole continent, but let me speak from where we stand from. And there are a few case studies who have managed to really turn it into a sustainable living, but those are few and far between. I don't know, Tabo and Senna, how have you guys been finding the money from your podcast? Is it paying the bills? Are you able to secure something for your son? His high school fund?
Nah. So I mean, for us, we're still in the, you know, we it's just been about time. You know, when you involve getting revenue from your podcast and stuff like that, you have to be committed. And with us, it's been incredibly difficult to, you know, block out time. Like we really, at this point, we've been, I think maybe for the last year and change, we've been recording on an ad hoc schedule. We will commit to say, yeah, Tuesday evening or Wednesday evening, but like it rarely ever is that. Stuff pops up, and you know, we just, you know, it's just about, let's just get the content out first and then think about the next level. We did Buy Me a Coffee. We launched that a while ago, but again, we haven't aggressively pushed that either, because just it takes a lot of admin and kind of commitment in terms of that next level. So I think we're looking for a point where the two of us can then sit down and commit and say, right, we're going to do this thing properly. And, you know, we have ideas, but it's just about, you know, at the end of the day. So anyway, yeah, at the end of the day, it's just, I think if you don't have the time to invest in it, it's hard to then come to your listeners and be like, hey, bruh, pay us money, or find advertisers and stuff like that. But I mean, we've had conversations with, you know, typical the Zim situation, right? So like advertisers would be people that sell solar equipment and stuff like that, you know, gas. Those are stuff that, you know, could resonate with listeners who would be looking to send some dollars back home, and partnerships in that way. But again, we haven't really aggressively pursued that, but it's just been surface level conversations. Like, when you guys are not actually serious about doing this commercially, you know, we want you guys to push our stuff.
Yeah. And I think on top of that, there's, no, I wouldn't say an added pressure when money's involved. Not that we would succumb to any sign of pressure or wouldn't be able to meet any kind of demands that come with sort of formal advertising and those kind of commitments. But I do think, like Tabo said, time is the one big thing, which oftentimes we don't have. So then it becomes a challenge of, okay, do you want to always be reliable as well in terms of showing up and making sure you're releasing good quality content all the time, and also be uncensored at the same time. It's just one of those challenges for us is, okay, can we set aside that amount of time that's necessary to make it a proper viable money-making project, which I'm sure we could. But then that also means compromising on some of the things we currently do and some of the things that maybe are in our lives at the moment. So perhaps if, for example, Mr. Maps, a few years ago, we both got married along the way, and then he has a child. So then it's more, okay, are we able to make that necessary sacrifice that you need in order for it to make sense? And I think up to this point, we've just been comfortable the way we've been doing it, but maybe we could look to change that in the future, Mr. Matt. Sure.
Yeah, and
Yep,
also
yep.
with advertising dollars, right? The next thing, like once we have sponsors, we now have to say stuff like, "Oh, the Super Bowl performance was great by Kendrick, and it was a powerful message," and it's just as inauthentic as it comes, So
You can choose your advertise. I was gonna say, you guys, you don't have to be so like apologetic about it. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, we know we should be doing better, but hey, bro. You know what I'm saying? We're telling the real authentic story of what podcasting is, right? You guys are not. It's not like you're experimenting. You've been doing this a couple of years now, so your experience is the experience. And frankly, we were saying earlier, Phil and I have got some advertising, but so limited. You've heard the podcast. There's rarely ever any ads that come on, and the few times that they have come on, it's normally when people look for us. So you're not in other territories, anecdotally, of course, in other territories there are whole there's interest in buying podcasting time. So people literally search, like, in this particular demographic, which podcasts are people listening to, can we put a budget to it? Done. You wouldn't have to do anything. You wouldn't have to set aside time to make it serious or anything like that. It would just, here you go, here's some potential advertising for you, because you got listeners, you've got an audience. King Kandoro, we've heard some ads on your podcast.
I was going to ask if I can, skip this question because it looks like I'm surrounded by some, broke people over here. It's like, I don't
Please
know.
forgive Kandoro. He got an awards nomination today, and I think
It's Aslama Ali. Aslama Ali. Things are tough. Hey, show me 12 years. So how do I share now my insights? So guys, I'm raking it in. Like, now it looks like I'm not sharing. So can I skip this one? No.
Tell us, brother. Tell us, brother. What are we doing wrong that you are doing so right, brother?
I mean, it's no. I think largely share the same sentiments, right? Where it's both the blessing and the curse of being operating in a largely Zimbabwean market, where there's not that much disposable income moving around. There is not enough of a belief that, first of all, podcasting being new media, the people that want to put this money are like, who is listening to podcast? It's only in these last few years where people are like, oh, we could put money towards podcasting, right? We could, let's put together a budget. But for a very long time, as you guys, two Broke Twimbos would know, there wasn't anyone looking to put money towards podcasting. And then now it's with the boom. I don't know if I can say the word, with the boom in podcasting, the prevalence of, your Olas, your other old media translating into new media. Now we're starting to see money, but it's not enough of a pie to be divided around. So you do get, I think in my case, it's largely been people that come to that are like, oh, I've been to his show. I like what he does, could stand up. Let me see if I can put, so your mukurus, your people who are trying to sell alcohol, people who are like, I have this little, I have so it's been that, but not a situation whereby we are fielding requests, we are sending our rate cards left, right, and center. Most often, you find a case where you get requested for a rate card. You send it through, and they're like, "Yeah, boss, what are you saying?" So even the idea of explaining something like a CPM and things like that, like you're trying to be clever here. You're trying to be clever. So it's still very much where you have, like you guys said, you have the cost of recording the thing, of paying the producer, the editing, but people just want to see a comfortable amount. People want to see you say, we'll give you this prime time slot for $50 an episode, because $50 then translates into 50 times 4, which is 200, and 200 is an amount that won't offend anyone. So we're still very much in that realm of people want to hear my $100 per episode. No one wants to actually get a breakdown of, this is how much it would cost for us to energetically read what you guys do, to enthusiastically share what you guys do. And I don't think we're still a few ways from that. You find most of the money that we have received has come from platforms like Buy Me a Coffee, where people are like, oh, we like this podcast, I'm going to buy X amount of coffees. And really and truly, that for me has been, hey, wow, why bother myself? I will stay there. I will stay there. So I don't really I haven't bothered myself with the pressures that come with looking for advertising, because I think I also share Senna and Tabo sentiment, where I know it's not real. But there's at the back of your head that whole, I would kind of have to make myself more palatable. And the crazy thing is, Tabo and Senna don't even have to worry about making themselves more palatable, because I don't think they are, line steppers like that. I would have to do that because I am a habitual line stepper. So, there's a.
Can I just say,
yeah.
Kandoro made reference to a rate card. Kandoro is a terrorist when it comes to rate cards. I've seen his quotations that he sometimes throws out, and I'm like, bro, which currency is this? I think this kind of leads to something that I think is probably the biggest takeaway that any other podcaster can take from our panel today. It's my opinion. Of course, others might think differently. And that's, if you're looking to make revenue from your podcast, I think the primary way that you're going to do that is from your fans, from your listeners, your fans, your super fans, your subscribers, because the advertising market anyway globally is getting more and more squeezed by the big three. I guess in Africa it's the big two, Google and Meta, or Facebook, and in America it's Amazon as well. So either way, advertising revenues for major advertisers are shrinking for individual media. So it's far less likely that the different companies are going to come with advertising budgets to our individual podcasts, and they're more likely going to take it to Meta or Google, and either way, when you post your episode to YouTube, their ad is going to play. When you post your video up to Facebook, their ad is going to play. So I think even if we were to figure out advertising revenue, if we were to make it perfect, that pie is going to continue to shrink. What you want is people who really love your content. They love what you do, and they are willing to support it to keep it going. They're like, you know what? I don't mind paying $5 a month for this. It's not crazy for me. I'll pay $5 a month for this. You get 100 people, 200 people starting to pay that, 1,000 people paying that. You've covered your bills and then some. We are unfortunately not close to that number, but we've been carried by our Patreon members. Now, Kandoro and 6 Foot Weights, you guys have used Buy Me a Coffee. Great. I think Buy Me a Coffee is a great way to sort of crowdsource funds. But that's a once-off payment that's dependent on a person's mood and moment. It's so much better to try and get someone to be like, listen, how much can you do every month? Like, what's fair for you to do every month? It's not a burden on you. And if you know this is coming every month, it's not going to mess you up financially. But since you love the content, it helps us to bring in some revenue. So I would advocate, if you are making content and you're putting it out regularly, try your best to funnel your top listeners, the people who really enjoy your content, to help sort of fund your content by committing to a monthly subscription, a Patreon versus a Buy Me a Coffee. Of course, that's just don't turn down money, but I'm just
So to that, because I think even way before Saturday in the morning, way before this current phase of my podcasting journey, we did Saturday in the morning, and I think we were one of the first to actually attempt the Patreon model. For me, the pitfalls of Patreon were, and this might have been me being lazy, which is something that I, have remained consistent over the years, is my disgruntlement with Patreon was, I felt like I would have to figure out an extra thing that I would have to provide over and above the podcast itself. So we already have the product where we are making this we're making it accessible to you, and we've asked you to contribute $5 a month. The question would then, almost unspoken and answered, but sometimes verbalized, well, what else do I get for my $5? Because you guys are still going to release this podcast for everyone, even the people that haven't given $5. And I would always feel like Paneka, and I think Inini, I don't like walking around like I owe someone money. I think that were the pitfalls for me with regards to Patreon. I always felt like I'm not doing enough to justify this $5 a month. I think at some point we even had 217 subscribers. But the number,
just when people say they're not getting, what else am I getting? Like, what do they mean? As in, what else could you offer besides an episode of podcast?
And that's the question that I couldn't answer. I think they want
to see you twerk, Kandoro. They want to see you twerk.
So
they want them OnlyFans videos, fam.
over and above those twerking videos, I think there would be like people wanted to see like BTS, right? Like extra episode, like let me get like an exclusive, like on
Get
top
ready
of,
with me.
Yeah, on top of this 1 hour, let's get like an extra 30 minutes extra that you're not giving everybody else. I think part of it was, what am I getting that other people for these $5? And because I couldn't answer that, with Buy Me a Coffee, it doesn't, in as much as it doesn't have that thing of $5 consistently. The thing that it has done for us, at least in our case, is it doesn't limit the giver as to how much they can give. So we have this guy that from time to time he will randomly show up and buy like 200 coffees, right?
Binga.
We're not getting that from what's it called, from Patreon. The coffee itself, I mean, it allows you to say we are selling this coffee for $5. So the coffee itself, when somebody buys a coffee, it is 5. They've given 5. I think the problem with us with buying coffee is the inconsistency, and that could be a myriad of reasons where we ourselves are not consistent enough with asking for people, reminding people to, but also it's sometimes people are not having good months, so yeah. Somebody's saying, what are you guys? Somebody said 2 Broke Twimbos at $5 got a lot of pick. What are you guys giving people for $5? What in the touchline is that?
Hold on. Before I address your question, Senna, is everything okay at home? Like, is everything okay, Senna?
No, it's not okay.
Why are you taking a bottle of wine to the head like that? Yo, Valentine's has my man stressed. Anyway, back to the discussion.
Can I just add? Can I just add to what Kandoro said? So, as you were talking, by the way, that's something that Phil and I have spoken about before.
Yeah.
So
that's such a real concern. It's such a real thing to think, what extra can I? Because Spotify, at least in Zimbabwe, Spotify is like $3 a month, and that's every song in existence. I know it's not technically, but basically, Netflix here is I think $7. That's all those movies and TV. So realistically, you're not going to give comparatively value in exchange. So I've also thought about that before, and it's a fair question. But I think another way of looking at it as well is, you're giving your biggest fans an opportunity or a way to support. So this is it's not a value exchange. It's if you like this content, could we get your support to help us to keep it going? Because it's not easy, it's not cheap, it's not stress-free to put this content together. We can't do it by ourselves. It's very difficult to get advertising. We don't earn anything from it. So if you really, really love this content and you have $5 to spare, we're crowdfunding. You're now part of the investment team into the podcast. As it gets bigger, you have the knowledge of knowing that you support. So it's almost like a goodwill thing, but that doesn't stop you from finding little extra, incentives and little extra things that you can give. So for example, for us, we have an exclusive WhatsApp group that we add all Patreons to. And it's sort of like a way to have direct content with us as the host of the podcast and whoever we have access to, and whenever we have access to cool things, and whenever we have one of the benefits that we've been able to give, for example, is sometimes we have access to tickets. King Kandoro would know that, there's some shows that he's been to around the world where we've sent lists of people that, listen, we've got our people in Germany, we've got our people in Dubai. So we're advocating for our patrons because we're like, we kind of owe you. So
I'm still waiting for what I get out of all those free tickets that I give out across the world. And these sold out
this
shows.
This past weekend, we had an exclusive watch party for a really gangster movie that we watched together with our patrons. And I was just like, hey, we were thinking of watching this movie this weekend. You guys want to watch it together with us? Exclusive to patrons. So you could add little things, that it's a way to sort of say thank you to the people who are supporting the podcast to keep going. But in terms of value exchange, if you look at someone giving you hundreds of coffees or whatever, you're not going to give them the equivalent value if you look at how much things cost, subscription wise. So it's also
I think also to follow on, we're going to give a shout out to Zamba's podcast in the comments. Thank you, Zamba's podcast. He's dropped a couple of comments here, but his latest one was about to say, Buy Me a Coffee, Patreon, and the subscribers can get sweatshirts, mugs, or something exclusive meetups with you guys to a party or subs only party and Zoom party. So So what he's suggesting is the stuff we do. So we do exclusive Zoom parties. So sometimes when we record the podcast, we'll literally just share the link with our podcast listeners, and they can join the recording of the podcast. Events, we get a lot of invites to events, and sometimes we'll really just tell podcasters, hey, we got an extra ticket to Burner Boy or something. Do you guys want to go? First person to respond gets the ticket. That type of thing. And that's really been, I think, a great way. But I think the most thing is just like community development and having conversations. Shout out to Tawi, who's here. Tawi is one of the most vocal Drake supporters, and he's been typing his thumbs away this past year, defending his man for his life. But it's created a great conversation in the group, you know what I mean? And stuff like that is real fun.
Yeah, man. I think I've always been averse to doing more work than I am already doing. So when people suggest to me things like, "Can you do a meetup?" I'm like, wow. Can you give people?
You do what you can do.
Can you? I'm like, wow. That I'm very averse to doing more on top of.
There's something that I want to do, and maybe you guys can like it. I would love to crowdsource peer pressure on Phil. So what I wanted to do is, generally our podcast is broken up into talking points. So the major talking point might be the Super Bowl performance, whatever, right? So what I had proposed was one of those talking points. We cut it out of the main episode and make it a Patreon exclusive. We still have a show that we give to everyone. The show is free, but we have a 10 to 15 minute segment of us discussing some topic that is exclusive to Patreon subscribers. And then we obviously have to figure out how to distribute it. And to be fair, I understand Phil's point is like, I don't like the idea of sort of walling off something to only people who pay and whatever. But I think it's a cool way of doing like something exclusive that we think is cool to someone who has proven that they are supporting the podcast.
But then the immediate question becomes the part that you select.
What do y'all think?
Because is it based off it being a fire segment of the show or it being a DAO segment of the show?
The most fire segment. The most fire segment of the show.
Which
and that's the best.
Which is immediately the problem of you're taking away the most fire segment of the show and giving it to a select few, whereas you could give it to the people and lead to more. Do you get what I mean? So things like that for me is like the moment I have to do balancing acts of now you're bothering me.
Exactly. And I think that the other issue I've had with that idea is I always try model the products I produce, even for client, as like, how would I want to produce it? And I'm an avid podcast listener. Let me tell you what I don't do is subscribe to podcasts that will of content, because I can get the content for free anyway. All the podcasts that will of content, the biggest fans pirate the content and distribute it to the other big fans. So I just don't think it's a great way to engender community. I think there are better ways to do it, and I think there's better ways to do it. Like you can do exclusive content rather, sorry. Like what we did this weekend, like with the Wicked Watch Party, with the Super Bowl Watch Party, with just conversations within the group. And it's a great way to also like do consumer awareness, because we share articles in the WhatsApp group and our listeners tell us, oh, we care about this, we don't care about this, and then that lets us know what to talk about on the show. I think there are better ways to do it. I'm really not a fan of walling off content like that.
I'm a big fan of the buy me a coffee system. It relies heavily on emotional blackmail. Like you have to seemingly put up the content for free, and then you hit people in the heart where you say, guys, if you don't buy coffees, you will die of hunger. That's model for me. Top tier.
Yeah.
Hey,
I agree.
What's happening?
Said it also an angle change like Beyonce, bro. Yeah.
What's
I
up?
had you on my phone. No, I had you on my phone. I had to switch to my computer so I could hear properly.
That's also the problem that you guys have, Senna and Tabo. You guys talk too much about how well you're doing in life. People do not donate to people they think are doing well. Okay.
Who says they're doing well? Except Tabo. I know
Hey,
Tabo.
you know,
Tabo
yo,
likes to think
I just got a
he's
flight to
doing
Cape Town. Yo, I saw the
Tabo-
F1. Yo, I was in
Tabo-
Europe.
Tabo
I went to
talks about-
Disneyland. Too much success.
Chabo talks about flying business in grade 5. Like I'm not going to buy your coffees. Why am I adding to this lavishness?
No, guys, look, I
Chabo
think
doesn't say it's not a let them eat cake.
But
Let them buy
Can I tell
cake.
you something? Whenever we have whenever we have an episode, right, where somewhere in the middle of it, Tabo might say something weird. What I think is a very easy justification is, but you guys aren't paying for this. It's fine. Or
100%.
do you know what I mean? It's like, oh, the podcast is late, so we try to release every Friday morning. But for whatever reason, sometimes it's not possible. Sometimes schedules don't align. Sometimes work, sometimes family, sometimes. It's always good to be able to say, okay, but at least this thing is free. There's no one holding anything over our heads to be like, hey, deliver, make sure.
Do you not know podcast listeners?
We end up being like the political party for that. If people complain about service delivery, where it's like, hey, and all this because somebody just subscribed to give us $5. Are you mad? Like this, like nah. It needs to be, for me, because I'm liable to say something I'm not supposed to say. If someone is going to come and try to talk to me about, I'll give you back $5. Right? Where it's like, let's not even go down that track anyway. We can just troll the listeners, have fun with it. Like, yeah, look, it's free. This is what you get when you listen to a free pod.
Because listening to Kandor remember when Kandor was fighting for his life just before the end of Sadza in the morning? And to be honest, that's when I knew that. That's when I knew that. When I knew that Sadza in the morning was about to end, when he held an episode hostage. So that people could pay all the monies they had to pay. I don't need that stress.
So I've had like a toxic relationship with our. It's it's a blessing and a curse of doing something that people will come out and say, yo, we love this, we are doing fun with this, but immediately after that feeling of, oh, this is such a dope, there's an entitlement that sips in that I never enjoy. Of, where are you guys? Why didn't this thing drop this week? Why? I'll give you an example of before I left to come to Zim this December, we recorded about 5 episodes, right? Put them in the vaults. Like, you know what? We are not going to be able to see each other. Let's pre-record. We will drop these episodes going into the new year. That way, we won't have, anything blank, blah, blah. And these are fire episodes. Life happens because, life happens. Life happens. So we weren't able to. I was busy with the tour, and down the totem pole of things that needed to happen, the podcast was when we finally got to it. Like, you know what? Let's start dropping these episodes. Bear in mind, these episodes are not dated. They can come out whenever because the subject matter is it's just random stories of. I remember coming across a comment that said, as cool as these episodes are, you guys need to get back to talking about current affairs because, by the time I was like, my man, you're not getting any of it. To this day, no episode has come out since that comment. And that was at Christmas time. This is in February. I was like, I don't need. When I started this podcast, no one told me to start this podcast. Like you're saying, it's not service delivery. No one is going to, I think that's the part of content creation that I don't get. Where people, for me, it's the things that we do to be able to do this for free are a lot. Like I have to go on tour and be able to afford. We have these nice cameras, nice studio. We're changing the lighting. Those things are not being bought by Marima Coffee. So when somebody then says, you guys are neglecting us, wang, 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 wang. Me personally, that's the part of podcasting that I'm like, I think I don't know how to tie it to the issue of the original question of money and advertising, but that imbalance, I feel it sometimes where I'm like, I do this because I love it. I love talking nonsense. I love sharing my thoughts, thinking out loud, conversing with the world. But where it now comes off, where there's an obligation between me and the listener, before I even add the extra obligation of $5 a month, yeah.
I see that. Now, I was just going to add that it's easy for us to joke about it because I think once you add, money complicates things. Like nothing complicates things like money sometimes. I always say between two people, you can have the best relationship and it'll be complicated by money. You can have a great friendship with someone. You lend them $100, it doesn't come back. Next thing, you're not talking to each other for 2 years. Things like that can happen. We get the similar sort of stuff. Like when the podcast is late, it's like, but guys, come on, what are we going to do this weekend? Or what am I going to do this Friday? But it's easy to, maybe we understand our listeners as well. It's part of the game. You're not paying for it, so you can't really, you can say, we're not happy, still not out on Friday on time or whatever it is. But for us, it's okay, you're not paying for it. So we also won't take that comment too seriously. It's a vibe. But I think once someone has a $10 that they've put and the podcast doesn't come on Friday when they expect it, I think that interaction goes very, very differently.
Yeah.
I look at it like this, guys. Not every comment deserves a response, but also every single one of us has paid for something that hasn't arrived. Like every single one of us has paid for Uber Eats and the order hasn't delivered. Did we uninstall Uber Eats?
Yeah.
No, you don't even
love
have
yourself
to go
more,
that
my
far.
brothers. Love yourself more. You are better than
we
Uber
gave the
Eats.
driver 1 star. We gave the
You don't
driver
have to
1
go
star.
that far. If anything is just at level 1, there's very little expectation. If you want to take it to level 2, level 3, level 5, level 10, there's going to be more expectation. If you want to go pro, then there's expectation. So to hold yourself back from being better because you don't want to have to deal with the expectation, I think is limiting yourselves. So it might not, maybe the money is not the direction you want to go. Maybe you want to go a different direction. Cool. But the better you get at anything, the more expectation there will be. If you want to stay at like, we just having fun and messing around, then no one's going to bother you. You know what I'm saying? So don't hold yourselves back, kings. Doesn't matter. Pressure builds diamonds. Pressure builds diamonds, yo. Don't be Drake when you can be Kendrick.
But then you see the thing is, you say don't hold yourself back because you're afraid of the pressure. But like now, even when we're just, you know what I mean, doing it like you said for the love of the game, and people are still sending out strays, it's just like you know what I mean. So that's where the you can project out. And
I think my beef is not so much the expectation and the excitement of, you guys, I like this podcast so much, where is it? I think there's comments where you see where they are very aggressive, very, very aggressive comments of a, like, your podcast and Zano PF have been bundled together in a, I cannot say this to a Zano PF minister, I'm saying it to you. Hey, these are the things that we don't like. I think for me, I don't, you can tell a comment that's coming from a place of, I like this podcast. I enjoy it so much. lovely comments were like, "Oh my goodness, I was looking forward. What am I going to do as I do laundry? Oh, or what am I?
Oh
How is
yeah.
yeah, those comments. I mean, we get it, but
I
there's
think on that
comments
note,
where someone is like, you guys are taking us for a ride."
on that note, I think on that note, hey man, we get shouted at. Hey, we're supposed to be doing our chores on a Saturday, and the podcast is not out. I get it.
No, but also the
But no,
Twimbos
okay.
are
Hey, by
offensive.
the way,
You
if
guys
there are
go on a
listeners
2-month
tuned in,
hiatus.
it's not most of y'all. Obviously, it's only
No,
a
no,
few of
it's
y'all.
not.
So
No, it's not.
we love most of y'all. So we're just venting
I
about
mean,
some other small
I mean,
things.
if it
But
was
we
too
were
much,
given an hour, and I think we've gone over time.
this is
Well,
meant to just an hour.
And
No,
now
we've
we're talking
still got
about
time.
Zambia. So I think
Gatoni said we still have time.
I think we've reached.
still-
Yeah, we were just.
yeah.
There's multiple panels throughout the day.
So yeah, Tabo, sorry, you're saying something?
Probably lost it, but I mean, it is what it is. I know. I was just reading one of the comments where they were saying, "Are we that bad as listeners?" No. Again, it's like 90% of you guys are really, really cool, right? And it is banter a lot of the time, right? Where it's just like, "Oh, what am I gonna do?" Da, da, da. And it's like, we wish we could have put it out on time, right? We don't sit there and we're like, you know what? Let's piss off the listeners and drop this thing on Sunday, right? So who's moaning
Sometimes
on
Kandora
the
did that.
microphone,
Kandora did that.
guys? What did Kaduro do?
He deliberately refused to release the podcast to piss off the listeners.
He held it
No, 'cause
hostage.
He was going through, the last weeks of Saturday in the morning. Like that's how, like, because my wife used to like listen to that a lot. So I would see when there was all the drama, and then I remember you guys were like, going back and forth, like in a fun way, and then it turned into some serious stuff. Then you guys had to like issue out tweets to be like, no, guys, we're homies. Like this is, you know what I mean? This is cool. Like all this is like. So I remember seeing those tweets and like, who are these guys? Like, and how are people so serious about this thing? Like that. This was, I'd probably say 2018ish times and stuff like that. So like, I mean, people get really entitled. Then now, if you involve people's money, you know what I mean? Like that's where the entitlement can go to another level. Where again, I can't have someone come chat to me funny over $5. That's where the math doesn't matter for me.
Yeah. I have a question actually, true, because we've kept it. I think we've kept it intentionally. I wouldn't say low key, but low key. Like it's the effort. Is it's not a lot that we need to get an episode going, but at the same time, we don't expect a lot from listeners. And then I think our numbers have stayed at a certain level with you guys, because I think you guys might have bigger numbers besides the financial. And I bring this back to the point about, I think it was those shits and giggles last year when they got into trouble. Don't you feel like the bigger you are, and this isn't a slight on any approach, do you ever feel like the bigger you are, the more exposed and easily, I don't know, I'm trying to find the right English word for it. The bigger you get, the more you're
the more
exposed,
susceptible you
the
are.
more susceptible, exactly. The more susceptible you are to like weird things and entitlement and cancellations and all of those things. Are those not things that you think about?
Okay, Mukudze, you have an answer for the class. Go ahead. And he's muted. Look at this guy.
You're on mute, bro.
Thank you so much.
Who's drunk? Is it Mukudze or Sen?
No, shout out to you, Senna, for this question. I think it's a very dope question. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
All right. I personally think situations like that arise when, to a greater extent, your podcast community is built from a place of inauthenticity. Like where in the beginning, the focus is much on growing fast and growing big. You don't stay around to cultivate your core people, because when you get to the level that those guys got to as quickly as they did, it's only after they got there when certain questions started being asked of, oh, who is the core audience, who do they speak to, how did they get to. I think you try to, I think Senna, you Tabo, you listen to Brilliant Idiots, right? Or Phil, I think you listen to you used to listen to Bodega Boys, right? And these were the podcast Brilliant Idiots, pretty big podcast. Bodega Boys, very difficult to cancel those podcasts, because these are people that from day one were like, this is who we are. We are not pandering to anyone. We are not, this is the nonsense we speak about. This is who we are. And they cultivated a following of people that liked the way they thought about things, spoke about things. I think you get to a certain part and you try to show the real you, and people are like, whoa, 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 whoa,
Oh, we don't like that nigga.
whoa, who is this? Who is this real you? Because this real you hasn't shown up in 300 episodes. Where has this real you been? I think certain things, because simple jokes, like if you actually look at the cracks of the things that they were being cancelled for, those were jokes that shouldn't surprise anyone if you've said them
Of
before.
course.
So that's not, but it's like you've pandered a certain way and you presented yourself a certain way. You have presented yourself as these guys. So when you say things that are even remotely out of line, they are like, people are like, whoa, 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 whoa. I think that was largely, I don't think any of us, primarily because we're Zimbabwean, I have any danger of, I mean, there are people who are doing worse than us who don't even have podcasts. I mean, I mean,
Yeah.
it's it's a very safe terrain. You get into some trouble, you sacrifice Shaddai. You're like, but guys,
Look over there. Look.
look over there.
Have you listened to Jenny J recently? What about Jenny J?
No, I
Yeah.
think also to piggyback on what Kandoro is saying, I think it's also the importance of like building an audience and building a community. Because if you build your
Yeah.
community and like you're saying, being authentic, it doesn't matter what you say. If you build an audience and you're authentic and they know, you know what,
Yeah.
Kandoro, like it's like Kandoro's old co-host, Nick. Nick would always fat shame, but that was his brand. You would fat shame. You couldn't cancel Nick for fat shaming because Nick was consistent
It
with
was
his
the
fat
thing.
shaming. Like, if you found it funny, you found it funny. If you found it offensive, you found it offensive. But what you couldn't do is try cancel Nick for fat shaming because people were like, but guys, this man's been making fun of
Don't you
footballs
know
for
Nick?
15 years.
I mean,
As a,
you know,
how would you keep yourself authentic when you become a success in the podcasting world? What would be acceptable in terms of change in the show or the host?
None of us are qualified to answer that question. Sorry.
I mean,
Yeah, because I think we've largely kept it the same, and it grows as you grow as a person. I'm just always scared because it's a lot of podcasting is a lot of talking, and it's many hours of talking for you to always say the right thing. If you get what I mean. And maybe Phil, it comes back to your point. If you've built an authentic
but
listenership, they will go with you. Like I remember we had a listener who, so I'll tell the story. Mr. Maps will remember it. So I used to, because I listen to a lot of dancehall and reggae, I say the word blood clot a lot when as just like an expression, like a throwaway line. One of our listeners, I guess she's a little bit older, so she didn't like it. So she reached out to us and said, "Hey, look, love the podcast. First things first, love the podcast. Love what you guys are doing. In fact, I listen here, such and time weekly. I don't miss an episode. But points of order, that word, maybe don't use it again." So that's an example of we've grown kind of beyond where we initially thought we'd be, and then you get into a different kind of fan base and you continue building your community. But then it's the way the feedback is given. It's not, oh, you said the word, I'm going to cancel you. It's in the DMs, hey, my guy, maybe that word, not so much. Not that there's anything I find wrong with the word.
Did they say why the word was?
Yeah. Oh, blood clot. I mean, you know what it means.
It's a curse word, and it's also an adjunction of a full word because it comes from a very specific place.
It comes from a very specific place. So, yes. So I'm sure when listening to it, it was, I'm enjoying this podcast, but damn, this word. So as you grow, if you have authentic listeners, they'll reach out to you and they'll correct you and they'll be understanding. But if you've got, like what King Kandoro said, maybe inauthentic people, or you yourself have been inauthentic and lying to those people, it then becomes easy for them, once you grow, to be like, actually cancel. Let's not deal with this guy.
Yeah, I mean, because again, people, there's different reasons why people gravitate towards something, right? Sometimes people just jump on a bandwagon because there's enough hype. I've seen, somebody will say, I've seen enough clips of this thing. Let me give it a chance. They don't necessarily know where it started from, where it came from, where it's going. They're just like, I've seen the hype.
Or someone sent them a clip.
Yeah, someone sent them a clip, and then some people are following simply to wait for the day that you fall off, to pile on, because again, that's another social media phenomenon where people just want to pile on. I think to answer the question where it says how do you follow through, what was the exact question? Let me see. What was it? How would you keep yourself authentic when you become a success in the podcasting world? What would you accept? I think the answer I had in my head is, with regards to, the fortunate thing about podcasting is that it's largely conversations based, first person conversation. You're talking about yourself for the most part. You're sharing the things that are happening. It's very difficult to ignore the things that are happening in your immediate world. I'm pretty certain, Senna, you're a private guy. You don't share, like, ordinarily without the podcast. It's not like you would come on social media and say, oh, I'm getting married, right? But even before you
just
got married,
pictures afterwards,
right? But even when you started dating, I remember you let it drop. Even we would laugh about the whole 6 month dating, 6 month friend. I say that to say, within podcasting, it's very hard to remove things about yourself, which helps with the authenticness of you. As you change, it's reflected by the things that you say, is reflected by the things that you share. So the people that started listening to me, Saza, in the morning, know, this guy, this is the stage that he's at in life now, or this is so even the way that I used to say certain things, or things that I used to like, those have changed. But I think when people are trying to project a certain persona is where the pitfalls come in, where you're like, oh, I've been this guy ever since from the get-go, and it doesn't allow the audience to grow with you, because at the same time the hosts are growing, the audience itself is growing as well. They're also having kids, they're also getting married, getting divorced, all those things. I think it's,
I mean, if the Twimbos have been doing it for 12 years, I mean, you're not the same person you were when you started, Phil or Dan.
I mean, Phil has tried to be the same person. Phil has tried. It's not for lack of trying. Phil has tried to be the same person. Zimbabwe is the only thing that is fighting him. Zimbabwe is like, no. Zimbabwe has said, no, my guy. Phil has been salad from Mutare since. It's only now that Philip has started being able to pronounce certain words in Harare. Because of Zambia. Can you imagine?
Oh man! All right. On that note, let's take our last question. Then we can wrap it up. It says, "Can sponsorship advertisers pigeonhole your freedom of expression?" My quick answer will be: it depends. If they're paying me enough for a livable wage, yes, because that's my employer. I will. If you're paying me a livable wage, I will say whatever you want me to say. Do you want me to sing show tunes? I will sing.
Let's
Pay
do
me.
it.
Oh,
Let's do it. It's really yeah. I mean, another way to answer that is they will if you let them. You know, if you let them, if you allow them, they will.
Yeah.
They will. They will.
But every business interaction is leverage. So if you find yourself, if someone comes who's got a lot more financial leverage than you and you feel desperate, they'll tell you what to say. If you feel that these are things that we don't do or don't talk. Phil and I have turned down advertisers who had specific agendas, partly because we know that we live in Zimbabwe, so we knew that we don't have the escape that Kandoro has, for example. But if you have enough leverage, if you get to a stage where, hey, if you want to come on my podcast, these are my terms and conditions. And the advertiser's like, yes, I desperately want to be on your podcast. I'll accept your terms and conditions. Versus, damn, I really want you on my podcast. I really want your advertising money. And then they're the ones who are going to, dictate the terms and conditions. So it's all leverage. I think the best way to accept it is to have a very clear step from the beginning that these are my values. I'm not going to compromise on this and this and this. And even if I lose the money, it is what it is. The good thing is, I think, like all three of our podcasts, as we've mentioned, we're pretty much in it for the love of the game. If we make money, great. If not, hey, we're in it for the love of the game. So I don't mind turning down advertisers if they don't align with. Although 2025 has started with hands, but
you never know. Next thing.
Would any of you guys consider money from a gambling platform?
That's interesting. So I don't like gambling in sports.
Bro. What do you mean?
No. Like
waiting on the flip of a coin.
No, to be honest, I would probably say yes, right? And I think I'd find myself in a difficult spot because I don't like gambling, especially in sports. Like I think gambling in sports is a very slippery slope. I think gambling has the potential to ruin lives. So these are some of like the moral questions I have.
It's not potential at this point. It's not potential. Gambling is not an upcoming artist. It's not It's doing this.
It's doing serious damage.
Putting serious numbers.
But to be honest, if we got an approach from, I don't know, Stake, for example, and they're like, hey, we need you guys, in every episode, you just put our logo on it and you shout us out for X amount of money. Like Phil said, at some point, some certain monies, if it becomes like your way to live, I can't just say no for the sake of saying no. But obviously, that's a conversation I'll always be having in my head in terms of what's a good sponsor that's not good? What's a good sponsor that's good?
There's no good sponsors, and we're taking those sheets and we're running with it.
I'm gonna leave you morally bankrupt individuals. No. So thank you guys.
Wait, Phil, before you leave,
what's your answer?
What's your answer?
I said no. No, I would not. I wouldn't take money from gambling.
Can you elongate? Just
I can't take money from a platform inherently. It's like, so the way I've rationalized it is like I do advertising and marketing for liquor brands, for example, right? But advertising and liquor brands, their primary objective or the primary goal people consume alcohol for the most part is enjoyment. They're trying to enjoy themselves, and for the most part, if you take something to beyond moderation, it becomes hazardous. So alcohol, food, whatever. Gambling by its very nature, especially
Thanks, I
gambling
don't
on
feel
mobile
judged.
devices, especially on mobile devices, it's designed to make you an addict immediately and rob you blind. And
Mm.
I just morally can't see how I can rationalize that, because ultimately what I'm doing is it's also counterintuitive, because now I'm taking money away from the people who are supposed to be giving me money with coffees. You're killing your supply. You know what I
Look,
mean?
look at this Hawk Tour podcast over here that's trying to launch a meme coin and rug pull from their fans. To answer your question, Kandoro, there's no. Do you know what? Capitalist
Hi
endeavors
guys,
all over the
see you later.
world, they are not right or wrong or moral. Thanks, Phil. They're not morally good or morally bad or whatever, right? It's a company. But if a company does something that I fundamentally disagree with, then I wouldn't feel comfortable taking money from them, because I would then, even in the way you'd hear me talking in the podcast or discussing topics, or if I see people in person or whatever, I would already
Yeah.
feel like I can't even be myself anymore, because I personally feel that gambling is the next big epidemic in Africa. So
Yeah.
I genuinely feel that, and then I'm contributing to it, which is different
That
to,
last
yeah,
weekend,
those guys are not really great, or they don't do a great thing. That's different, as opposed to
seven.
I am promoting the next big epidemic in Africa. I wouldn't take money from a gambling
I
gambling
knew
company.
gambling. I knew gambling was serious, like in Africa, but I didn't know how serious it was until last week Wednesday, when all those Champions League games were on
That
at the same
Champions
time.
League game. People were looking at it as if, how people are looking at it almost retrospectively, like how we look at investing in Facebook and Bitcoin. Like this is going to be my big payday. And I think I've had conversations. I think that's when I realized there's certain moments, like naturally, I have moments where I'm like, Inini, I want X amount so I can buy this for my wife, so that I can right? And then I had a moment where somebody was like, hey, we're trying to reach out. I work for X and X, gambling, what? And I'll be like, yo, my man, yo. And it's those moments where I question myself. I'm like, am I really serious about this capitalistic life? Because morals and what? Because for me, I think like I don't even know if I have any. I've seen the effects of. I've been in a betting hall before. People were betting on mobile phones. When you're in rooms where you can smell desperation, like
Yeesh.
it's thick with desperation. People are holding slip that is teams from Uzbekistan. People have put dollars on a betting slip that is 16 matches. Oh, just so they can see it say at the end the payout could potentially be 16,032. Because all they're doing is selling hope of, oh my goodness, if it connects, this could be. I mean, there's zero chance. I mean, if there was, the probability is next to none. Next to none. You're betting for a team that plays its football at 3:43 a.m. in some other world, and having been in those holes, realizing like, yo, I couldn't possibly contribute. I mean, if here's my caveat though. If a betting company could figure out a way to bet on political events in Zimbabwe, and maybe even I will extend it to like Southern Africa. If we could do a bet where he's saying put a bet on Malema or Umkhonto Wesizwe or ZANU PF, Blessed Geza, that I want to participate in.
Prize picks.
Like that I want to participate, because I think there's a I mean, every day in Zimbabwe, I mean, whether you're going to a betting or not, there's a little bit of gambling involved by staying within
Just by living.
Just by living in it. I think being allowed to profit a little bit on, say, Tottenham Avetera, wearing the Apollo jersey at some point. I think it makes for juicy living. I would sign up for that.
All right, guys. So let's take advantage of this opportunity to wrap things up. I think it's been a great conversation. We've been answering questions as we've been going along. Shout out to everyone who sent in their comments and chats. Shout out to Sambaza Podcast, who has been the most active. Shout out to you.
Shout out.
Please, if you
Special
haven't seen our podcast, look for all 3 podcasts of ours. We've got some dope content. We are based in Zimbabwe, but we talk about all kinds of things global and African as well. So please do look for us. We are 2 Broke Twimbos, 6 Foot Weights, and Black and Forth. You can find us on all the podcast platforms. Black and Forth even has full video episodes on YouTube. It was one of my topics about the benefit of video, but we're out of time. So
I mean, it's because
all right,
we're
gents. Shout out to this very diverse and gender sensitive group.
Yeah. This DEI group, very, very diverse and inclusive.
Thank you, Gatoni, for inviting us and having us here. Please look out for our podcast. And on behalf of all of us and on Phil, who's also left just a few minutes early, we want to say thank you very much for tuning in. And we will chat in the Patreon group when you subscribe.
Shout out.
Peace and love,
Thank
everyone.
you so much, guys.
I think we can end it now.